Beautiful people, welcome back to Organizing an ADHD Brain, where the perfect place to start is right where you are. I'm your host, Megs Crawford. I'm a professional organizer, an ADHD coach, and a fellow work in progress. Because let's be honest, we're all work in progress. This season 3, we're talking about the messy middle. Not about the before, not about the after, but all of the stuff that comes in between. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of stuff that comes in between that perfect before and after picture. So let's jump right in. Welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to introduce you to my new friend, Anisha. She is an ADHD coach, a behavior analyst. She's a fellow ADHDer. She's a cat mom, which I find is a pretty common trait amongst us ADHDers. And she's also a toddler mom and pregnant with her second baby right now, too. Her website is fabulous. She has so much knowledge. The people that have worked with her have nothing but incredible things to say about her. You and I met on Threads because we just started talking. I was talking about the messy middle and doing a podcast episode and finding other people that were ready to talk about it. And I love the way that you engage with the ADHD community. It's been fascinating to watch. I'm so glad to now know you. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It was so great meeting you on Threads too. That was my leap into trying to engage more on social media, and it was a great experience getting to meet you there.
Yeah, it's neat to see you engaging. You have found a way to truly create a community there, and I'm very impressed with what you've been doing so far.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, and what got you into ADHD coaching?
I am from BC, Canada, so quite far away from you, but I am self-employed, which I love. I wouldn't have it any other way. I get to follow all my little ideas and tangents, maybe not all of them, but lots of them. I'm a cat mom, toddler mom, and pregnant. And honestly, having a toddler makes you relearn everything and practice all the tools and all the strategies. In 2018, I started my master's degree in behavior analysis. And then I finished that in 2020, right in the pandemic, and then studied for my board exam to become a board certified behavior analyst. And that was like a really big 4-hour exam that was like climbing a mountain trying to prepare for. Finished that. And of course, right after, I was like, I should do something new on top of that. Now that I'm done all the school and the tests, I should look into this other program of ADHD coaching because I've always loved talking about ADHD with my friends. I seem to attract all the other ADHDers just naturally. And it's just so enjoyable for me to learn more about it. I did my coaching program with the most amazing cohort of other ladies that I get to still be in contact with. And it was such a great sense of community. And I found through that process, I've just worked on integrating the two approaches. So behavior analysis is different, but what I learned through my master's degree and my board exam and my experience in that field really helps inform how I look at things and how I work with people. So it's been really fun for me to explore how the two can interact together and just see what the next step is for me. I'm never somebody who's happy just doing one thing. So the variety has been so helpful for me.
Yeah, preach. It's like I get new business ideas every day. And I'm like, Megan, like you could do other things, but keep it in the same realm. We've worked really hard to build this. So
or every new hobby, I could monetize the.
Oh my goodness. You can actually have a hobby and not monetize it, believe it or not. If you needed to hear that, you're welcome. Because sometimes I need to hear that.
Yeah, I've tried to keep them separate because then they're like low pressure. I can pick them up when I want and drop them when I want. And those are just for me. But this has been something that is like a hobby, but also it's my income. I enjoy it so much.
People with ADHD are some of the most fascinating people I've ever met in my entire life. The people that truly want to understand their brains and like get to this next level of experiencing life because they see the barriers, but want to understand the barriers. It's really cool.
I mean, I'm not surprised I ended up here. I was always that kid that was like, but why? But why?
Yeah.
And my entire education and now career is answering those questions or digging into them more and figuring out why or figuring out what the next questions are.
It needs to make sense. It needs to make sense. Yeah. Okay, so I love this behavior analyst part of your life. That's what you got your master's degree in it. And From what I was looking at on the website, you help people analyze their behavior and their surroundings. So tell us what you do as a behavior analyst and why that's important to what you do. Yeah, tell us everything.
So behavior analysis looks at patterns of behavior to figure out why people do what they do. If you're seeing a theme here, the why again. And what supports people, what gets in their way, and what makes certain actions easier or harder in their life. So I find that impacts my coaching because we're not focusing on fixing the person. The person's not doing anything wrong. We are focusing on how can we set things up to accommodate your needs, figure out what your needs are, figure out what's important to you, and then design different aspects of your life to support that. I really enjoy looking at okay, what's already happening? How do you naturally function? And some people might see it as but that's the problem. I think we're most successful when we look at our natural rhythms and tendencies and how we do best and then build off of that instead of trying to change who we are. On smaller scale, an example would be I'm never going to be a person who puts all my clothes away perfectly all the time. That's just not me. And I figured that out. So instead, I bought multiple laundry baskets and put them where I drop clothes. And that made it so much easier because it's in sight and it's so easy. And I just went with where they're ending up naturally instead of trying to shift every part of how I'm doing this task. So on a larger scale, I think something like that is applicable to lots of people and something that we do a lot in coaching and in behavior analysis as well.
That's beautiful. And to that point, we so often compare ourselves to other people, and then we feel like we need to live up to this expectation or this perceived expectation of what other people need us to do, which is to pick up our clothes and put them away perfectly, right? That would mean I'm organized, except that we truly just need to understand what could be good enough so that it works in the moment, and we can be proud of doing something that works for us.
Yeah. And what is actually important to us. Maybe that's not important to you, and it's totally okay. It's not worth spending the energy on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, totally. But we sometimes expand that energy because we think it's important to everyone else. So we're got to be important to me too. I do love that you speak to finding your authentic voice and your authentic self through coaching. Tell us a little bit about what you mean by that.
I find just through my own experience and also the experience of the people that I work with and my background in behavior analysis and working with different kids, there's a lot of pressure in life to show up as someone who's quote unquote normal or do what everyone else is doing, or there's a right way to do things. And I find that over time that just puts so much pressure on you and leads to so much masking, which sucks your energy. Often by the time, especially for late diagnosed people, by the time where we get diagnosed, often as adults, especially for women, it's hard to even figure out who we are anymore. I'm really passionate about helping people figure out who they actually are, how they actually work well. Everybody has strengths, not compared to everybody else, but compared to yourself, you're going to have strengths of some sort. And lots of people come to me thinking they don't have any strengths or they don't know what they are. So figuring out what are you passionate about? What are your strengths? How do you do best? What makes you feel fulfilled in life? Really discovering who you are as a person without that outside pressure of who you think you should be is something that I'm really passionate about. It's hard to mask all the time and to not feel clear on what's important to you or what you like or how you even want to spend your time.
That's beautiful. I find myself asking myself, what do I want? And oftentimes I'm thinking about what I should do, all of these shoulds and all of these things. Yes. I'm thinking about what other people might expect from me. And then I pause and I'm wait, what do I want? And sometimes I don't actually know the answer, which is an important thing that I'm noticing and I'm trying to figure out, because oftentimes we are so concerned with everyone else that we don't ask ourselves. And then we do mask. We do try to fit everyone else's mold of what we think is right.
When you were talking about that, I was thinking about it is so hard to sometimes figure out what you want. And I think sometimes we can get stuck in that goal setting cycle. I have to have something that I'm working towards right now. I have to be clear on what I want. Even if you're in a period of trying to figure it out, sometimes that can be a lot of pressure. Over the course of coaching, I have learned a lot about values, and I have explored this concept a little bit more, which I really like, because instead of it being a destination, I need to get here, it's more of a compass. So you can make choices that move you in that direction of the thing that you value. And sometimes that freedom can be so empowering. I don't have to have it all figured out right now, but I know this is important to me and this decision will be more in line with that value. And that's still okay while I figure out what I actually want in life.
I love that you were able to reframe that and talk about values. I actually had a therapist tell me to go and figure out what my values were. And then I saw a video on TikTok, hear me out, the other day. And something I work on with my clients is our beliefs. Like our beliefs fuel our thoughts, and our thoughts then become actions that we take on a regular basis. But our beliefs come from our values. The values are the ones that fuel the beliefs. And I thought that was really valuable because oftentimes we don't think about the values that we truly hold dear. Like, what even is a value?
Yeah.
How does one discover their values?
When I start working with people in coaching, I have a whole bunch of different options because everybody learns best differently. Some people can get like absolutely stuck with open-ended questions, but you give them 2 choices and they're good. So there's lots of different free values assessments online. There's word banks where you can choose which ones resonate the most with you, or you start by saying, okay, these ones don't apply to me at all and work backwards until you have a short list. There's ones that display 2 different cards and you select which one resonates with you more. And then you go from there and it gives you a short list at the end. There's ones where you can reflect on a past experience and go from that process of figuring out your values. I think it's really individual and depends on what helps trigger that reflective process for you in a way that is not so much pressure that you shut down.
Cool. We'll drop one of those free assessment quizzes in the show notes. That way people can check it out. When you talk about behavior analysis, values, and working with people, I'm curious about your experience with helping people with clutter, because that's something that you help people with as well, like the organization, the getting to doing the thing. Oftentimes, ADHD coaches in general work with organization because that is an executive function defect, right? That's something that we are not very good at.
So first thought that comes to mind is that a lot of people are very affected by the amount of visual stimulation in their environment. So for example, my space reflects my brain. If it's very messy and there's stuff everywhere, I'm not sure which one is like the initial part, whether it's like my brain feels cluttered, tangled, it's hard to think, and therefore like it's hard to do anything, or if my environment is getting away from me first and therefore like I just have a harder time because there's a lot visible. But I find that dealing with some of the clutter in the environment is something actionable that I can do even on a hard day, even if it's just starting with one thing. Like, I know this piece of garbage goes in the garbage. I'm going to put it there. And if that's all I can do, that's okay. The other thing is that the environment triggers different thoughts of things that we need to do and memories and whatnot. So it's such an opportunity to use it strategically. But in order to use it strategically, you have to have a limit on the stuff that's visible. So I have never been a person who's not going to have some sort of stuff on surfaces. That's fine. But I have been able to shift the stuff that I do have on surfaces to help remind me of the ways I want to spend my time, or the things that are important to me. And I love that. In order to do that, though, I have to be able to notice the things that I'm purposely putting out versus the things that end up out anyways, right? I find that a lot of people who are struggling to manage clutter are stuck in the decision-making process. Like, there's just so many options, there's so many decisions, and now we're frozen. So breaking it down to, I know your ideal goal is to post those and sell it on Facebook Marketplace. However, that is like a ton of steps. And maybe it's not accessible right now. Maybe we need to find a way that's more accessible in order to get that out of your environment if that's something that's important to you. Really separating out what is my ideal plan for this clutter versus like what meets me where I'm at right now. Because the ideal is not helping anybody if it's not happening.
I have sold things on Facebook Marketplace, and I have also paused and just taken like carloads of stuff to donations, which have been a game changer. The amount that I've been able to release in one moment without having to make 15 more decisions on it. It's been such a beautiful experience and such a release in a way that brings that same dopamine rush as going to Home Goods and buying hundreds of dollars worth of things, right? Like, you get it in a different way because you're freeing up your space in such a beautiful way.
Let's take a quick break.
Hey, just a quick interruption. A lot of you have been asking how to join the Organizing an ADHD Brain community, and I'm excited to share that we're opening again on January 1st. Right now, for Black Friday, you can grab the yearly rate for next year at $297.
Just to give you context, the normal pricing is $37 a month, so the yearly option gives you 4 free months for 2025. If you already know you want the support, the body doubling, the monthly workshops, the gentle structure that's actually ADHD friendly, this is the lowest price you'll see all year, and it locks in your spot before we open on January 1st. The link is in the show notes, and if you're unsure which plan fits your season or your budget, you can just email me directly, megs@organizinganadhdbrain.com. I'm happy to help you figure out what makes the most sense. Now back to the show.
I really think that our environment affects what we do and our ability to process things and how we spend our time. And when you're bouncing from thing to thing, which is so common for us ADHDers, it's already hard to stick to it. So if our environment's set up in a way that encourages that, like jumping from thing to thing to thing and feeling so stuck, that's only going to compound the situation for us.
Yeah. When we are jumping from thing to thing, we are in this cycle of stuck, even if we're feeling like we're making movement and we're doing things, we don't see progress.
So doing and progress are definitely two different things. Took me a while to figure that out, but
yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Okay. So this season, we're talking about the messy middle. And I define the messy middle as the point from point A to point B, but like all of the grossness in between, because we can see the before and after pictures on Instagram. We see the people who have written the books, right? Like, this is who I was and this is who I am now. But in between that, there's a lot of work to be done outside of our comfort zone. And so often people hire a coach to go from point A to point B, understanding that, well, I just want this and I want it to be easy. But also, we don't necessarily truly understand the grossness that comes in between. Sometimes it actually gets so much messier before it gets better. So in your experience working with people, tell us what it looks like to go through the messy middle and how the hell do we do it?
Yeah, the messy middle is an interesting concept. I don't know if there's really an end to it. When we set goals, we're achieving those goals and assuming like now we're good. But really life is just a series of ups and downs. And we will get to the point where we feel for a moment where like things are good, we're in this flow state, we're managing well, and then life happens, right? Somebody gets sick or your perfect routine gets thrown off or, growth in itself is uncomfortable most of the time because change is uncomfortable. It really stretches us. I think that my biggest messy middle moments, there's two clear ones that stand out to me in my life. Number one, when I was in university, that's when I got diagnosed and it was a giant messy middle. I think that the only pauses were between semesters where I was like, okay, I can breathe again. And then you're into the next one already. So that time felt like just trying to keep your head above water, and it's so uncomfortable, and not everything's going to be perfect. It's impossible to have things set up in your ideal way all the time, as much as we'd like that. And the other time that really stood out to me was after I had my daughter, when it feels like all your structure and everything falls apart and you relearn from the very bottom of like, how do I feed myself again? How do I do anything? Because none of my supports, none of my structure is there anymore. And trying to figure out like, I can't work out under the ideal circumstances anymore. How do I get back to moving my body because I know it helps my brain? Like, you have to relearn everything. And I mean, that feels like the epitome of messy to me. Because not only are you, like, you're not necessarily learning a new skill all the time and trying to change in that way, but like the skills you thought you had and the things that you thought, these ones are solid at least and a rhythm for my life, those were gone in both situations. So it really forced a lot of growth, and that is uncomfortable.
Yeah. I want to dive into what it means to like notice the discomfort, because I think the way that I used to do it, I'm curious if you can relate to this. The way that I used to notice discomfort is I would feel obviously really uncomfortable, but like the feeling for me is a gut feeling, or like my chest will get really tight. Or I will start to frantically fix things or get into this all or nothing mode of trying to make things better right away. And for example, my husband and I, we just moved to Massachusetts, and I previously owned a home where I had bins and labels and I had figured out where everything goes in my home and thought that I would very easily be able to do that
when we got here. But of course, I had to follow my own methods and I had to think very strategically and very hard about making decisions. There was no more autopilot. I couldn't go on autopilot mode. I had to stay in this very decision-making mode, which has been very, very uncomfortable. Like, how do I make these decisions moving forward? So really, I want to know when someone feels stuck and they're coming to you and you've been working together and they have made progress, how do they get back on track again? Right? And
I love these moments.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yes, I do too. So tell me about how you approach it.
First of all, I want to start off by saying, like, it's so much easier when you're not the one in the middle of it. Like, it's so much more clear when you're on the outside looking in. And that's why I'm totally fine saying, like, it's not always clear for me in my life. And I don't think it ever will be, because nobody's perfect. You can still help other people, even if you haven't 100% mastered it in your life without support. Support is a great component of it. But when I start working with people, I tell them in like our first call, there will be a point where you're not moving forward or you feel like things have dropped off or something in life gets in the way. And this is actually the most valuable part of coaching, because if everything's perfect and you're good, that's not life. And then if that's happening our entire coaching package and then we're done, you haven't actually worked through the problem solving process of those like big feelings and like, oh my God, I feel like I failed. And now like, what's the point of trying again? Because I'm just going to fail again. All these thoughts that are coming up and your past experiences impacting like how you feel about it. That is the point where I think coaching is the most valuable, because you can support the process. That's where the problem solving happens. Like, okay, this wasn't sustainable on a hard life moment or like on your hardest days. So what needs to change? Is it that what you were doing no longer works? Sometimes it no longer works, but usually it's a matter of like, we haven't accounted for the low capacity days or the days when everything is challenging and we are now telling ourselves that it's dropped off and there's no point in continuing. When realistic, we need to plan for those days because they will happen. Each years have varying capacity. Almost everybody I've coached with has days where like the brain won't brain. It's just a part of it. And we can account for that and work through it. But the more opportunities we have to practice those moments where it feels like everything has fallen apart and how are we going to restart, the more prepared people are for after coaching when those moments happen and they're on their own.
It's beautiful. It reminded me of a freebie you have on your website that I want to highlight. Have you taken care of your basic needs? And it reminded me to drink water in that moment. It's interesting because on those days that we feel like our brain can't brain, we're most dysregulated. Those are the days that we're the most hard on ourselves. And those are the days that we're not going to be able to get the most done, which is fascinating. And it's just such an interesting thing to notice. It's so easy as an ADHD coach to sometimes say, oh my gosh, it's hard for me to notice those things because I focus on this. I help people through it. But the introspection you need to be a coach for yourself is a whole nother level. In fact, I don't think that you should be, because while you are the expert on what works and what you need, other people are always going to bring you a new perspective. That's why we listen to podcasts. That's why we talk to other people with ADHD, and coaches need coaches. I could say that until the cows come home, because I could say something all day long and I might be living it, but it's not until someone else says it to me that I'm like, yes, implement that again.
When you're hiring an ADHD coach that also has ADHD, I try to really model to people that I still try to manage my ADHD. That's just, I'm not trying to fix it. It's a part of who I am and how I work. And I'm not going to say it's a superpower because I hate that. There are strengths and there are significant struggles. But if I can model to people, like, we're going to have those hard days and they're not going to necessarily go away, but our measure of success shouldn't be that we never have hard days. All right. And like, I'm still going to have my own executive dysfunction. I'm going to forget what tools work for me. And then somebody will say it and be like, oh yeah. The amount of times my therapist has asked me like, well, what would you tell somebody in a coaching call if they said the same thing to you? And I'm like, yeah, right.
Yes. Yes. And it's also such an important aspect of just having more people with ADHD in your life, so you don't feel like you're going at this alone. That just brings me back to that, you know, your experience on social media and bringing people together and asking people what does work and what works for them, because it's such a great idea to understand
you can go online and find a bazillion strategies and tools and whatnot. And I think there's so much more to it than just knowing what the tools are. And also getting new ideas and having ideas for starting points is so valuable because maybe you just haven't looked at it from that perspective before. Or maybe somebody sharing their experience can help you be like, oh yeah, like that makes so much sense to me. I'm going to try it and have hope that there's still things that I haven't tried that can work before. The novelty is always a component that makes things a little bit easier for our brains to manage. So it's important to recognize that too. But, just having a starting point when it feels hard to just design it on your own can be so helpful. And I found those posts really helpful for that. I really enjoyed looking through, it was ambitious probably, but looking through everybody's responses and trying to themes and make a list of okay, here are some things that came up multiple times for people. How do I get more exercise? Get a dog. That came up well over 30 times at least, maybe more. But that's not ever something that would have been on a list online of how to work out more consistently.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh, people with ADHD are so darn creative.
We have a natural tendency to be so creative as ADHDers. And also when you have a lifetime of trying to do things in the right way, we've put so many boundaries on ourselves of even though that might work, I'm not even going to try it because it's not the normal way to do it or the right way to do it. One thing I end up doing a lot in coaching is giving people permission to experiment and find things that work for them. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make any sense. Sometimes I work sitting on the floor because my body is most comfortable there. It does not make sense to most people. I'm not going to sit at a desk all day because it literally is uncomfortable and hurts my body. But I can't think in one place all day, and that's okay. If I try to just sit at my desk all the time and do what everyone else does, that will result in one of the least productive days ever for me. So the process of giving yourself permission, and if you can't give yourself permission, having a community of people that encourages you to give it a try and experiment and see if I tried this, what happens?
That is so encouraging because I have seen so many things online too that are people saying, that's never going to work for me. I'm never going to try that because that's never going to work for me. And sometimes because we see that they have ADHD too, we assume that, oh, well, if it's not going to work for them, it's not going to work for me. Or vice versa. We see that something's working for one person and then it doesn't work for me. So now I'm shaming myself because I'm not as good as you, right? There's so many aspects of that. But I do appreciate trying something, whether you think it's going to work or not. And truthfully, if you think it's not going to work, then you're right because you have decided that up front. But if you're open to learning and to see what could work for you, that can make all the difference in the world. But that is also building that momentum to actually take the action and to noticing how to take the action. Then to that point too, the decision. Sometimes we have so many tools and so many things in our back pocket that we don't try any of them and say they don't work because we've had too many decisions, haven't actually tried any of them because we have too much knowledge and now we don't know where to start.
Or our expectation is in order for something to be a successful tool, it has to work all the time. This is another thing that I start out with. I don't believe that it's possible for a tool to be effective all the time for an ADHDer. We need enough tools that we can cycle through when something stops working. And we have another option on a short list, not something that's going to send us into decision paralysis. But we need enough options so we can meet ourselves where we're at instead of trying to bully ourselves into being the perfect person for this tool. The tool is supposed to help us. It's like clothes. Clothes are supposed to fit our bodies, and we're not supposed to change our bodies to fit the clothes. And I think the same thing works with tools in our brains.
Yeah. And also taking ourselves out of a box that we need to check to see if it works or not. I was just talking to a client today and she expressed just wanting to get outside. But what if you are walking to your car? Does that count as being outside? Can you notice these other experiences where you are outside? And maybe you take a deep breath to enjoy it and give yourself a little bit of grace and credit for doing it. It's that all or nothing mentality. Oftentimes we're like, well, if I go outside, I need to go outside and I need to breathe 10 times. I need to do 4 squats. And then I can say that I did outside, right? I did the outside and now I can go in the inside. But we can actually let it be the easiest thing possible, but we tend to overcomplicate it. And then if we get it wrong once, then we're going to get it wrong forever. But truthfully, you're going to get it wrong until you get it right.
And if you're not already doing the thing, that can be a really big leap for your brain. For so many ADHDers, momentum is so key. And this ties in the behavior analysis side too. Often we are trying and then we're punishing ourselves by being extremely critical and shaming ourselves for not doing it perfectly. And those are not the behaviors that are going to increase in the future. Like when we're beating ourselves up, of course it's not working, because why would it? It's uncomfortable and miserable, right? If we can shift our bar of what counts and feel the win, maybe that's just sitting on the deck. So you're still getting sunshine, but it's not like going outside. Or maybe it's, I'm just going to go walk out my door and then walk back in. And that counts. And that's fine. Often I find once we're actually in the space, we want to continue the thing. But when we set the bar so high to even start, like I can only start if it's exactly this way, it's so challenging.
It just reminded me of noticing the progress. So coming back to our perfectionist mindset and trying to incorporate this ideal, if you are striving for a value or if you do have a goal or an intention in mind, is starting to see that now. So when I was still in Colorado, one of the reasons why I wanted to move to Massachusetts is because it's super rural and you can see the stars, like galaxies. Like the way you can see the stars here is amazing. And that was one of the things, like I can't wait for the opportunity to see the stars. And my daughter had this exercise she had to do for school where we had to go outside and look at the stars and look at the constellations. And there was one night we went out and it was cloudy. And I was like, see, no stars. You can't see the stars here. So like, obviously we came inside and I started to go out more often. And I was like, they're incredible here. I just haven't taken the time to notice them because I feel like there's this thing I need to achieve and to do in order to get to this end point that I'm looking for. To relate this back to organizing too, when you're starting to get organized and decluttered in your home, you're not going to see the stars right away, but you could notice that you've put the scissors in a place that future you is going to go look for them when you're trying to find them. And that is a star right there. And you could notice that you actually come back to a project that you started and you're like, oh, look at this. This is different. And you start to see these things and this evidence of you experiencing this life you want to because you've taken the time to notice. So I appreciate that.
I had so many thoughts come up while you were saying that. What's recent in my head that came up was the concept of glimmers. And I worked with a client once who really struggled with the idea of gratitude because it felt very like forced and artificial, but she really connected with the concept of like glimmers. And it can just be like a moment. It can be seeing a few stars in the sky that's mostly cloudy. And that's okay. And I have found this like shift because we have a negativity bias. And that at one point was helpful. Our brains are trying to keep us safe. It's trying to help us avoid the lion that's trying to eat us. But right now, of course, there's stress in all sorts of areas. And we have to put a little bit of extra effort into training our brain to notice those small, enjoyable things in life. The other thing that came to mind, noticing is the very first step. And so many people come to me and they're like, I've noticed that blah, 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 blah. And I don't know what to do about it. And I don't know how to start working on it. And I try to encourage them like, well, you've already done the first step, because if you can't notice it, it's impossible to change. Then you just start noticing it faster and closer to when it actually happens until you're noticing in the middle and able to do something about it.
Yeah, that is it. That's what we work on too. It's noticing. And when you notice, you start to get curious naturally as a human, understanding, why is this happening? Because when you notice you're doing it once, it's like, oh, that's interesting. And then you notice you're doing it again and again and again. It's so fascinating to then say, well, why is this happening? Like, why am I doing this? And what do I do to get beyond this now? How do I notice to the point that I'm changing and I'm starting to understand that this isn't what I want anymore?
Yeah. And figuring out why is so essential. And again, this ties the behavior analysis back in, but figuring out like all behaviors have a function. There's a reason why we're doing it. And if we can really get down to the root of like what it does for us, because if it wasn't doing something for us, it wouldn't be continuing, then that helps us figure out what to do instead or what some other options that might meet the same need are.
Yes. Oh my gosh, so much yes. Like the way we approach our clutter keeps ourselves safe. Believe it or not, like none of us want the clutter, but our reactions to it keep ourselves safe in the moment, the moment, not long term, but in the moment, which is half the battle right there.
Yeah.
So much of what we do is just keeping ourselves safe. And our brain doesn't want us to be successful. it wants us to keep ourselves safe. That is just our natural inclination.
The definition of what success is has changed over time too. It doesn't make sense for your brain to cling on to successful because it's such a shifting bar. 10 years ago, my idea of success is drastically different than what it is now, and that's okay. In order to be successful, you have to stay safe. So it is still helpful, even if it's maybe not having the effect in your life that you would ideally want.
It's identifying new ways to keep yourself safe, reminding yourself that you're safe.
Yeah,
I love that.
There's other options.
Other options. That's awesome. Okay. Tell us a little bit about how people can find you.
Well, my website has contact information for me. I show up the most on Threads over any other social media platform, mostly because it doesn't have 50 million steps to showing up on it. But that's a really great place to find me if you're on that. Otherwise, Instagram is also a good way, and those will both be linked in the show notes. 2 things that I have on the go right now. I have a few spots for one-to-one ADHD coaching, and that's something I'll always have open. And then I also have a new offer that I've been working on, an executive functioning profile, which is more of like a little intro to what your strengths are and what areas that might need some support are and how those can work together to set up some strength-based strategies. This is a snapshot into how you work best and some specific questions in a questionnaire. So it's not going to be like, do this and this will be the magic solution, which I don't even do that in coaching. But here is a starting point. Here are some options that might work for you, or a way to understand why certain things are hard and why certain things are easy. For example, I have a few coaching clients right now, because this is a part of my coaching offer as well, that really struggle with task initiation, but then they have a strength of sustained focus. So now that's led to an understanding that the starting is the hard part, but once they start it, they're good. It's a much shorter amount of time that they have to experience that discomfort for and experience that resistance for before they get into the part where they can just flow. So this can be thought of as like a roadmap, a starting point. And then if people want, I have an optional single coaching session to help give more individualized examples or specifically talk about your life and barriers that you think might come up if you try those things and work through the results together.
That's beautiful. Any last minute thoughts that you wanted to share with the audience before you part us?
Maybe just a few of the things that I have found really have stood out to me the most out of my ADHD experience. There's such a focus on consistency in life, and I encourage everybody to shift their perspective to persistence, because like we were talking about, there's going to be things that come up. You're going to drop off. You're not going to be able to do the same thing every single day for the rest of your life. And being able to shift to like, my success is being able to pick this back up when I notice it falls off is such an important thing to learn as an ADHDer. And also, baby steps count. 1% better is great. And it doesn't have to happen every single day for it to be 1% better. You can zoom out and see over the course of, the week, the month, maybe you're doing the thing more often, or maybe you're challenging those thoughts more often. And that is still progress. That's still a win. Even if you have an off week or 2 weeks or whatever.
I love that. Baby steps is still progress. Abso-freaking-lutely. Cool.
We forget that.
We do.
I forget that still.
Yes. We do still have to remind ourselves that. And it's good to hear it from other people. And that has been the persistence piece of it, has been the only reason why I still have this podcast and continue to grow my coaching business, is like coming back to what I know works and building off of that.
Me too. I remember when it was just the expectation was I have to do it all the time for it to count. And unlearning that took some time. But now knowing that like my experience is still valid, even if I drop it off and pick it up a little bit and it flows with the rest of my life, that can still be success. And honestly, it's so empowering because life is not the same every day forever.
Yeah, especially with kids, especially with hormones, especially with everything that comes up. Preach. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today and your expertise. And I hope if this resonated with you at all, you go check out Anisha and all that she has to offer.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun talking to you, and I will chat with you on Threads, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much for listening to Organizing an ADHD Brain. Just remember, I am not a doctor or a mental health professional. Everything I share here comes from my own lived experiences or my professional experience coaching other ADHD humans. If you need medical or mental health advice, please reach out to a licensed medical professional. What you hear on this podcast is for support and education, and how you use the information is completely up to you. For more resources, free downloads, and different ways to work with me, whether through coaching or the community, please go to organizinganadhdbrain.com. And don't forget, the perfect place to start is right where you are.